And good morning and welcome to IIJNM webinar series Storyboarding Journalism. I'm Sangeeta. I teach English at the Indian Institute of Journalism and New Media, Bangalore. Today's webinar is on the future of sport. We have alumni Meghna Bhatt and Ritvik Mehta, who have experienced sports journalism from different spectrums, print and television, with the former working as a special correspondent at Hindustan Times and the latter as an executive producer at Sony Sports. They will discuss the challenges of reporting and producing sports content in times of no live sport due to COVID-19 pandemic. As usual, per our previous webinars, the format will be that the webinar will run for 60 minutes and the speakers will take questions for the last 20. However, when you share your questions, please put it in the chat box for everybody to see. And I will call your name out and you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly to the speaker. We can begin if both of you are ready, Ritvik and Meghna. Shall we begin?
Yeah, right.
Yes, cool. So we can start off by, I'm sure all of us would love to hear about your journey from and to IIJNM and after that. One of you can start off.
Meghna, go for it.
Yeah. So basically, I took up the idea of studying journalism because I couldn't play particular sport. I thought, okay, if I can't play it, let me at least cover it. So that's how the idea of journalism grew into my mind, just so that I could cover tennis, which I followed a lot as a kid, and a little bit of cricket as well. So joining IIJNM that way was really helpful. They not just taught me what sports reporting is about, but even put sense of what editorial news is, how it needs to be approached, and what work needs to go behind making a story come alive on the television. So first semester, actually first 6 months, we had a broad selection of the main topic, the main subject that you have to choose, and the second 6 months were where sports reporting came into existence. That's when we were asked to go out reporting. Our sports teacher also took us out to golf courses to make us understand how a particular sport works, what kind of reporting needs to be done. And after that, I got placed with Times Now Sports Desk. Um, Although the journey in sports at Times Now wasn't that great because they didn't really focus a lot on sports stories apart from when only Olympics is happening or a World Cup is happening. And they slowly started phasing out the entire sports show itself. So I was shifted to news for a good 1 year. That's when I started, thinking that probably it's the right time to switch. I did 1 year of news apart from 6 months of sports desk, and I landed a job with Sony Sports in 2015. And so since 2015 up until now, I've been with Sony 6, and I'm working there as an executive producer. I worked on the IPL for 3 seasons, and then currently work with the cricket team. It's completely different from what news channels look at sports as. I'll talk more about it further. I'll just let Ritvik take over now.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same story in terms of getting into sports journalism. If you can't play sport, you settle for the next best thing, right? Which is to cover sport. So, in a way, IIJNM was the best thing to have happened to me in my career because it gave me the platform that is so crucial in this field to kind of get inside the field of journalism and then take off from there. So, I mean, yeah, a good 1 year in IIJNM, got placed in DNA, which is Mumbai. The first 6 months, actually, I was in the city desk because there was no opening in sport, but I was promised that I would be shifted as soon as there was one, and promises were fulfilled. I was in sport in 2012, December, and then I stayed in DNA for a good 7 years because I loved it. I loved covering various sport, and opportunities grew as everyone else started exploring other opportunities. And so yeah, 7 years, learned a lot, and then shifted to Hindustan Times last year. And yeah, since then I've been in HT, and the work's almost the same, but the paper is different and different challenges and everything. But yeah, sports journalism remains the same.
Thank you, Ritvik. So I have 4 questions
Right.
for both of you. I'll start with the first one. This is to the both of you. How does sport reporting and production work in times of no live sport due to the pandemic? Either of you can start off.
Right. So I think I'll take this first, and I'll talk about reporting in terms of stories when there is no live sport. Right. There is no live sport. There are no events to cover. There is no press conferences, and to be honest, initially for the first week or so, even we were like kind of caught off guard. We were like, okay, what do we do here? Because there's no sport. There's nothing to report on. But slowly, as we dug deeper, and we realized that there's actually a range of stories to be explored, and things as basic as if it's difficult for you and I to stay indoors, imagine how it would be for a sports person who's so used to living out of a suitcase, right? So we started this entire series called Lockdown at HT, where we asked every top athlete what their daily schedule was, just sitting at home, because they are not used to doing that. So that went on for a good 1.5 months, where every day we just spoke to athletes and came up with their version of what being in a lockdown meant. So it was something as simple as that. You didn't even need to come up with like these fancy ideas to kind of keep the ship going. It was something as basic as that. Like most of the story ideas, they are right in front of you. You just need to look at them. It's the same with sport. And this period was kind of the best to connect with your sources, or the athletes or people, whoever right? Just get on a call and just talk to them, build that camaraderie, and you get stories like that. Like I remember I did a story talking to some source about one young boxer who was stuck in a Sports Authority of India center here all alone. So she was all alone for 2.5 months in this huge campus. So stories like these, you just get it. You just have to like speak to people, just call them, and this was the best time because you literally had nothing else to do. And there are so many other aspects, like how do you train at home, mental health. You can you look at social media and they give a glimpse of what they're doing, which we'll come to later, and just basic things like that. And there was these range of stories which you could explore before even live sports started last month. So I mean, yeah, to round it off, initially it was tough, but then as we put our heads down and kind of realized that okay, this is like normal reporting. It's stories are just there. You just have to look out for them and build contact and connection.
Right. Meghna, do you want to tell us?
Yeah. So for television, it's a different challenge because there's a lot of editing and a lot of footage transferring and then putting it on TV is involved. So initially, what even we thought was that the lockdown would be just for a week or 10 days max. But some of the sporting events across the globe was getting cancelled. That included cricket as well. So what we started doing then was sitting at home. We started accessing our library. Our library had a lot of archive footage, a lot of archive rights to Cricket Australia or to the England Cricket Board or South Africa Cricket Board. And then we started looking for stories from those particular archives, like creating a top 10 in Australia during Ashes, top 10 innings by Sachin Tendulkar in Australia. So we started looking at such topics which could also then interest viewers, because you're sitting at home, you need to give them things that are popular. Like say Sachin Tendulkar works perfectly well because people just sit in front of the TV even now to watch him. People love watching the Ashes encounters and India-Pakistan rivalries and all of that even now. So what we did was we started digging into our archives to find out if there is a storyline that can be made. And then some of my colleagues had an edit system at home. thankfully. So we then transferred the footage, did the edits at home, you know, for a 1 hour slot or a 30-minute slot. Even did voiceovers at home using our mobile phone, covering ourselves with a sheet, because that's how. So if you go to a proper studio, there's a proper room which is soundproof, and there's no echo and all of that. So you have to find a way to do the same thing even at home. So the hack is use a bed sheet over your head and record the VO. That is another hack, sitting at home, what you do. So that's how we build stories, voiceovers at home, scripts at home, and look at your archive content. Then the next step for us came was that, okay, fine, there's a lot of social media interaction going on. Why don't we call the heroes of one particular series come and speak to us, and there'll be an anchor as well. So we started approaching these heroes like a Ravi Shastri or a Sunil Gavaskar or, Rahul Dravid, whom we invited for a 30-minute chat. And instead of speaking about, where Indian cricket is right now, we thought it's a good thing to tell the viewers how these people played in their times, talk about that particular innings, about their difficulties, their challenges, and the planning in general, how a team plans, how a team functions, captaincy, and all of those points. We covered those, got these experts to talk about that game that they were involved in, and did a live chat on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever platform. Then we made sure that because we are a TV medium, we put the same content out on TV and then follow it up with this match so that it gives a proper timeline for viewers also to understand what the expert was talking about. That's how we started coming up with new storylines, which were a little from the 90s and the 80s and early 2000s. Because let's face it, Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, all these people, even the footballers, in fact, all these people were doing their lives constantly, right, on social media. And people kept listening to what their favorite movie is or favorite hangout places, etc. But we decided to take an editorial route rather than asking them these general questions, because that needs to be strong. That's how we then got hold of the athletes to talk about a particular moment and put it out on TV for the viewers to understand it better.
Right. Thank you, Meghna. What you spoke about social media and us getting to know our sporting personalities better is what the next question is.
Yeah.
Again, to both of you. What are some ways of keeping sports journalism relevant in this social media era, where the line between sporting personalities and fans is getting blurred? And also, does social media play a role in identifying sports stories, and how?
Right. So the first question, yeah, I mean, it is a challenge because, like, each other. So what are we doing, right? So uh, the challenge is to make our interactions more meaningful and more technical, more analytical. That is the challenge because, like Meghna said, it can't be about, oh, what was your favorite spell or what was your favorite food when you went. It has to be more sport oriented, so that I mean our readers can realize, okay, if you want some good fun, and if you want to know the guy or the girl or the woman better, you can go for the social media. But if you want real sport analysis and the finer nuances, then you have to go for this. Also, social media, like you said, is everywhere now. Most of you in this chat would get your scores on your phones just minutes after the match has ended. I'm sure none of you wait for the morning paper to read the scores or who has beat whom. So sport journalism is no longer about, okay, X beat Y or A beat B, because it's there everywhere in our lives in social media. So our challenge is again, find out the nuances about each report, and then get it across in that report, because that is where your story will stand out or your report will stand out from just the plain vanilla XYB report, right? X beat Y or whatever. So in this era of social media, which you rightly said is there everywhere, and it does play a big role in identifying stories as well, because a lot of these athletes now, in fact, most of them put up stuff they are doing on social media, right? So even in this lockdown, we got to know what each athlete was up to at their own homes. So like there was someone who was, weight training with an empty gas cylinder. So, and he put it up on Twitter. So that made a story, because, that's something unique. And we wouldn't have got to know that unless we know that athlete really well, right? So because it was there on social media, we called and we did an interview about how exactly it worked and stuff like that. So yes, social media is a big tool right now. It is there everywhere. It's here to stay. It's nowhere to go. So our challenge as sport journalists is to go deeper, is to write about the finer nuances of the game, and just in general go deeper in every subject that you're doing, more analytical and yeah. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Ritvik. Meghna?
Actually, I agree with a lot of what Rutvik said, because whatever stories you do, they need to be strong. They need to have a context with the player and the footage that's playing. So for television or even for social media, see, although they are doing their own personal social media engagements where they're talking about, their favorite things to do, favorite movies to watch, when there's a channel that comes in the fore, that's when the channel needs to take a stand about putting in the right content out, and not just for the heck of it do something that will go viral. That is something that the network should understand first, and then approach an interview on social media a little different from what is already out there. um, one the thing what we did was engaging fans, but also curating these fans to ask questions that were rich in content, and something not again the regular, gossip kind of stuff. That's what we did, and that has actually helped us in understand that there is one particular segment of fans who are actually interested in the sports that these cricketers play, want to understand their routine and things like that. So that's the route we took. And yes, it is getting little blurred. And I wish TV channels, news channels also took up, what Rutvik is doing, for suppose finding out what athletes are doing in their free time, how they're training, how they're keeping themselves mentally fit. I wish that was the case, but unfortunately, sorry to say, with news channels these days in sports are not really looking at doing things on athletes' life or a backstory, life story, etc. But for a broadcast channel who has rights to content, we are looking for stories which have good context, and not engage in spoiling our relations by talking about personal lives of an athlete. That is something that we totally should stop doing. I feel it's not really cool, because they're here to play. They're professional athletes. You would rather pick their brain on how they approach their game than to talk about their personal life.
Right, draw a line between the personal and the private.
Yeah.
And what is happening with regard to the England versus West Indies match that is happening today?
Yeah.
Is there anything happening on social media? Are they doing something different?
Actually, it's interesting how, because now there are new norms to every live game, right? There's no more crowd that is invited to watch a game. It's all going to be on television. There's a biosecure environment that's being created.
Right.
But that means that you'll have to take, because there is a press conference that happens before every game. There is media interaction, then there is, crowd interaction and all of that happening. So what the England team and the West Indies team did was press conference via Zoom, like how we are doing right now. A bunch of journalists were invited. There was the athlete, and then there was the media manager standing beside him, helping him out in answering questions to journalists who were asking on Zoom. That is one way of going about it. And yeah, the series looks exciting. It's first cricket game happening after at least 3 months now, and there's all the more interest because England, who are world champions right now, and also had a fantastic summer last year in 2019. They are seeing a new captain in Ben Stokes. He had a great summer last year, and since Joe Root, who's their actual Test captain, he is not playing the first test because he's having a baby, in a couple of days. So they decided that probably we should try out Ben Stokes. So that is also creating a lot of interaction between fans, and even experts are waiting to see how this guy will approach the series as a captain and not just a player. And West Indies team can be the underdogs and spoil anyone's party at any time. That's the kind of team that is. And hope they actually give England a good fight, unlike the 2017 series, which went in England's favor. So I hope it's a good contest and we get to watch good cricket from now on.
Thank you, Meghna. Sitting in our homes.
Yes, sitting in our home.
Yes. The next question is to Ritwik first. How is reporting sports stories different in print as compared to other media?
Yeah, so I mean, I will talk about the difference in print and online, because there is a considerable difference, and there are two different approaches in a way. So I mean, the simple way to explain is if print starts from here, online starts from here. Now, what I mean is, if you get into a newspaper, you will start by reporting the local matches, right? You'll start by reporting school matches, college matches, district matches, interstate matches, nationals. So that is actual on-ground reporting. If you get into print, if you have an idea, okay, I want to just come and report on England versus West Indies, I want to write about that, then print is not the medium for you, because in print there are actually levels, and you go higher with each step, and you learn the tricks of sport journalism as you go higher. Online is straight away you go. I mean, just go to the maximum level. Just turn on your laptop and write about whatever you see on television, right? It could be on Messi, it could be on Federer, it could be on Kohli, it could be on anything. So you can basically write on anything, because that's how that medium works. It needs stars, it needs hits, it needs traction, and it needs you to write on stars. It doesn't require you to write on an inter-district match happening in Mumbai, right? So there are two very different ways of functioning about these two. So while I would say most of you here might be attracted to digital, because who doesn't want to write on Kohli or Federer or Messi or Ronaldo, whoever it is. I mean, anyone would want to. But I'd say the real fun of sports journalism is here, down here, where you kind of go watch school matches, college matches, report, and that's where you kind of learn and grow into the nuances of sports journalism, the way to report a story, the way to write a story, the way to write a match report, and then you build connections, which is very important, because if I were to know a college player at this time, 5 years down the line, if he goes on to represent the country, he will remember me and I will remember him, because we've had our, chats and contacts from when he was effectively a nobody. So that way, print reporting, you're actually out on the field. It is more sweat, it is more hard work, but it is more fun. Online, it is more attractive for sure, because, you can write on anything under the sun. But I would say more fun is here, because I mean, I've experienced it, and although I would say the future of journalism is online, like most of you know, but I'd say most of you here, if given a chance, you should definitely try print journalism first, at least for initial years, get the hang of reporting, and then probably you can do as you feel. But so yeah, that's the essential difference basically. One is about sweat and fun. One is about, the optics of writing on something and that high. But both different, very different kind of high and fun. But yeah, I'd say definitely print reporting has its own charm.
Thank you, Ritwik. Yeah. Meghna, how is it to sit in Sony Sports and produce? How do you see the stories being different?
So I'll actually tell in two parts. First, the television news aspect. So when I was with Times Now and we had a half an hour show, we would cover all the main topics happening around the world and just, do a story about what this particular athlete did when he's freely playing at this particular venue, and will he be able to do the same thing now? So there was a question mark which we used to add at the end of every story instead of giving out the story. But that is different when it comes to producing at Sony or a Star. I'll tell you why, because we have access to former players who have played the game, who in their middle and come and do commentary for us, and also who have a good sense of the game, right? So what we do is then we talk about a particular player and do analysis of how that player has performed, and the voices and the perfect voice to give out are these experts, because no one knows the game better than them. No one can tell it for the fans better than them as to how a particular player plays, and that's how we build our run order. So suppose we want to talk about how the Ashes series happened, or how a final of a FIFA World Cup went about. The best way is to get those people who have played there, who have been there, answer the questions, get the answers from them, and put out the report rather than having a big question mark. So that's the difference. What we have. We have thankfully access to a lot of these players because they come and do commentary for us. That's how we roster the entire series, which is again converted for even the regional places by doing Hindi, Tamil, etc., and for the English part as well. I wish news channels approached former players as well during series to talk about how the game is going on, etc. But again, it's not something that they invest in, I guess. But channels that have rights to these games tend to do it this way. And when there are players there are players there for you at the ground and you have access to them, make sure you do their life stories, their backstories, so that people can know what these players are all about, how they started their journey. That part remains the same as it is for Ruthvik as well for reporting. When you find out about the player, and then you talk to experts about former players, about what they should do and how should they come up with ideas in the middle and all of that.
So it's about making it more human interested, so people get to know them better. No,
human interest when it is needed. If not, if there is suppose say I have a Saurav Ganguly playing for the India team today, I would rather pick his brain on what kind of a captaincy role he has in the team, what kind of players he looks at. I wouldn't do a profile on him because people know him as the captain, as a good brain, good mind in the game. So I would think about what that particular player is good at. If there is a newcomer, say there's a debutant coming into the team, then to popularize what he is all about, I would do first a backstory, because there's nothing much to talk, right? He's not entered the international level yet. So you need to see what player you're approaching for an interview, about what player you're talking about, pick the best topics, what that player has specialized in or has not, and talk about.
Just quickly, Sangeeta, thanks for pointing that human interest thing. That's another thing with print reporting, right? You get these amazing human interest stories of people who are just starting, kids who are starting, young athletes who are starting, which is difficult if you're in the digital world. So human interest stories, yes, a big hit in print, and there are some amazing stories out there.
Okay. Do you want to suggest any currently?
No, I mean, it depends on, if you're in Mumbai, there are these young and upcoming athletes who are kind of, so there was this young under-19 cricketer whose mother is a best conductor, and she is the sole bread earner of the family, and he has gone on and represented India, and and now he doesn't want his mother to work, yet in this pandemic she is out there working, because buses are an essential service. So we did a story on how he's even in these times of crisis, his mother is out there working, while this guy has already played for India. And there are these stories out there which is just amazing. There was this one story about India's top sport climber who's in Jammu. Her mother is a nurse in a COVID hospital there, and although they live about 10 minutes, the house is here and the hospital is here, they have not seen each other for 3 months, because if you're a nurse, you cannot, I mean, they have to stay in a hotel, right? So they haven't seen each other for 3 months, and she's like 18 years old, and she has to take care of her two younger brothers, her dad who's also working. So yeah, stories like these which can only go in print, because this will not get you traction online. So that's the essential difference, and stories like this are fun to do.
Thank you, Ritvik. And Meghna, do you think that sports media has a duty to provide coverage to less popular, by that I mean non-cricket sports and women's sports, even if there is less viewership for those?
Honestly, yes. And that's why my point on I wish news channels did a better job with covering sports, non-cricket as well. You don't have to wake up every 4 5 years when there's Olympics or when there's a FIFA game happening just to find out about these smaller, not I wouldn't say smaller athletes, actually talented athletes, and do story on them. We shouldn't be doing that. There has to be stories, or at least if it can't go in your daily segment, at least make a feature for the weekend where people enjoy such content, to find out what kind of talent is there in India, what kind of support this needs. And because of this exposure, you never know that they might be approached by sponsors, there might be people interested in investing in growing that particular sport, or a group of athletes who deserve it, be it archery or be it shooting. Wrestling is growing in the north, and that is good. Finally, thanks to Olympic medalists who are putting that in front. So we need more such, exposure, more, more actually investment to make this particular non-cricket sport group more popular. But having said that, women's sport, cricket, let me start off with, is growing in the right direction. It's going in the right direction. It's growing as well. Because in March, we saw the Women's World Cup, Women's T20 World Cup take place, and the finals had 80,000 plus crowd in Australia, which has never seen before. So it is a great boost. So if you ask these athletes, how did it feel? They are like, it was unbelievable. We have never seen more than even I think 1,500 people in the stadium. That's what they say. And to having 85,000 people supporting you is a great boost. It's great encouragement that comes from within, that finally people are taking us seriously. And for non-cricket as well, the likes of, thank God for the likes of PV Sindhu, Mary Kom, Sania Mirza, Sakshi Malik. All these people are actually showing the world why they need to be followed, why they need the support, why they need the sponsorship. And it is our responsibility to give them as much exposure as we give the male athletes, as much. Hi, is it clear? The audio clear?
I think I can hear one second. I think it's, yeah, gone. Please continue. Yes.
So yeah, it is our responsibility for sure. So news channels really need to start thinking on those lines. As far as broadcast channels who have rights, if you would have seen with Star Sports, when there's a Kabaddi league happening, they make sure they show you stories of these Kabaddi players and what they've done in the past. And look at how it's growing, even on television. Nobody would have thought that it would get the kind of viewership that it is getting now. Nobody would have thought that, Bollywood stars would invest in it. They would get sponsors and all of that. So apart from getting this in the front right now to show the world that, okay, there is a Kabaddi league also that's there. Come in, please play over here. I would also say it needs to be marketed well. You can't let a sport be like you can't conduct a sport and not market it well. That is another thing that needs to be really looked into. So what Star Sports has done with Pro Kabaddi League is really good. With ISL, what they're doing is really good. Getting more people from India, within India, from the corners of this country to come and play, and then probably get a deal outside where they can play with a better team or even build a good Indian team for that matter. Same with even wrestling or badminton. There are leagues that have started now. Hope we try and invest more in these so that it only gives more exposure.
Right. Thanks, Meghna. We can jump to questions from the from the participants right now. We have a couple of questions. I'll call their names out. The first is Shaurya. You can unmute yourself and ask your question, Shaurya.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Hi, Shaurya.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
Shaurya, ask your question, please.
So I want to ask that I want to pursue in sports journalism. So what will be the main points that I can do after the 1 year of PG diploma course?
Okay, so you want to pursue sports journalism after your diploma, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what he said. How can I go for sports journalism after the diploma course?
How can you go? The best way is you have to do your work in that 1 year of wherever you're studying, right? So you have to just come up with sports stories which will kind of interest whoever's coming to either hire you or whether you are going for a job. So you have to do stories which are related to sport and which can give people confidence that, okay, you can report on sport and you're good at it, because unless you do stories which are related to sport in that 1 year of learning, there is no real experience to fall back upon. So try and do stories which are related to sport. I'm not saying just do sports stories, but keep in touch with sport reporting and look out for stories which are there. And I mean, once you do that, I'm sure you'll shine out and people will believe that, okay, you've done sport and you'll be good at it. So then it's easy once the guys come to hire you, or whether you go or whatever it is. So, and then you have to make the call. So yeah, I'd say focus on sport reporting while you're in that diploma course.
Meghna, do you want to chip in?
Actually, I agree with what Ritwik had to say. That 1 year, your editorial sense of a story firstly needs to be strong for you to identify a good sports story, something that has content, and not just report that, okay, there's this match happening and let me just cover it. You need to find stories within that game as well. What a particular player did on field, off field, in the nets, how he was performing, was he playing a particular way. So try and firstly strengthen your editorial sense of any story for you to then recognize what's a good sports story with rich content, and so that you don't do the ones that don't really matter.
Thank you, Meghna. The next person is Aniruddha Yerumkar. Aniruddha, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, please? Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to ask, like, how do you guys research before taking an interview, like about the personality, and do you guys use other sources also for your research before taking any interview, like personality before any event?
Make that go first.
Yeah, Ritwik, do you want to take over?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because a lot of interviews require a considerable amount of research, especially if that athlete is not well known, right? So it's the same for any other interview that you do. Just read a lot. Whatever is out there on the web, in books, in newspapers. just read a lot, try and get a sense of that athlete's life and personality and whatever he's achieved or whatever. And also, if that athlete is well known and if he's there on social media, definitely look up his social media handles, because you get a glimpse of uh, how that athlete is in terms of just being a person. Like if you want to interview uh, whoever it is, you need to find out how that person is in a way, and social media gives you that little peek into somebody's life, right? So I mean, it's the standard protocol for any interview that you read a lot, read up a lot, and if you have any like people who are any expert in a particular sport, reach out to them, ask them, okay, what can I ask? Let's say if you want to interview like Bajrang Punia, so get in touch with someone who is solid at wrestling or he knows this stuff. So there's no harm reaching out to people and asking them, okay, hey, I'm going to interview this guy. What do I do? What should I ask him? I've done that a lot of times. I've gotten in touch with seniors or colleagues who are an expert at a particular sport and who might know things better than me. So yeah, just the standard things that I mentioned.
Thank you, Ritvik. I think Peyush can ask his question. Peyush Jain. I think I can just read it out to you.
Right.
He wants you to throw some light on how to tackle gray areas in the field of sports, like match fixing, bullying, racism, and whatnot. I think both of you can.
Yeah, maybe you want to go first?
You need to approach these stories carefully, get your facts right. Let me give an example of what's happening right now. Many athletes are taking Black Lives Matter stand seriously before when they're playing in the middle, be it in football, be it in cricket, be it in Formula One. Make sure you report the truth of the story. For example, don't actually, I don't know how to answer this. Don't kind of show an athlete in a light side. Show the kind of support that he's giving. Talk to him if possible. Talk to him or her if possible about what he thinks about it, and not just show the visuals, because that adds a lot more volume to your story. But yeah, just be sure before asking these questions, because you don't want to say for match fixing, you don't want to rub off the athlete in the wrong, in a bad way. Whoever is facing you in, suppose there's a press conference that's being held on match fixing, and there's a very popular player sitting in front addressing these issues, make sure your questions don't kind of, piss them off. You need to get your story out. You need to ask the right question in the right way, and get the news out, rather than accusing already, even without any truth being there. So make sure you approach these issues very carefully and report responsibly, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, just adding to that, this is where the basics of journalism kick in, right? You have to be very sure about what you write, the people you speak to. Try and get in touch with as many people as you can if there is a story, if there are like these stories on sensitive matters, and be extremely sensitive, because from personal experience, a lot of these athletes, although they tend to speak out on Twitter, they're not the same once you reach out to them. Like, for example, I reached out to at least 10 athletes to comment on George Floyd's death, and only one, which is tennis player Sumit Nagal, responded and spoke about it. So athletes themselves are very sensitive, and they would rather not talk about such gray issues. But if you have to report, you have to report. So, but make sure that your basics are right, they are solid in terms of what you're reporting.
Thank you, Ritvik. Abhishek Datta, you can ask your question next. It's something that Meghna, you touched upon. Abhishek,
Okay.
are you?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning,
Are you
ma'am.
here?
Hi.
Am I audible?
Yes, please ask your question.
Actually, sir, how do you actually balance the relationship with the sports person? as you have to criticize them in their poor performances, and you have to be in their good book as you need newses or interviews with them.
That that is a very good question, Abhishek.
Oh, Ritvik, you're on mute. 1 second. I'm just finding you. Meghna,
Yeah. Firstly, try and I know you have to write. Suppose in print you have opinion pieces to write on a particular player, and you tend to write after probably say a slump in the person's career, and decide on behalf of him what he should be doing. See, most of the times these athletes, if you build a good relationship with them, um, you can ask them tough questions. They'll answer it for you. But again, make sure that these questions are asked in the right way without putting down the athlete. Don't go the Arnab Goswami route. I'm being as blunt as that, because understand that these players play in a certain condition. Everyone has their highs and lows, and especially in India, we tend to pull down an athlete after just one series or one particular tournament slump, right? Or try not to ask the questions in a very demeaning way. Ask them in the right way. I promise you, the athlete will answer. If your question, if the choice of words are right, and but you're into is very serious about how the team is doing, etc. Trust me, the athlete will answer you. Just be nice in the choice of words. That's what I would say. You can still get out a good story provided that is strong.
Ritvik, do you want to?
Yeah, just to add on that, that's a good question, by the way, because we still
Yeah.
constantly battle that, So, firstly, restrict your criticism to on-field. Okay, it cannot be about this guy was eating burgers while one day before his match. No, that if you write that, there's no point. Restrict your criticism to performances on the field, and you'll be surprised. Athletes themselves will be the first one to admit, okay, I was not doing this right, if they indeed were, right? So they know that where they are going wrong, and if you concur with them, they will agree, yes, I was, in this series I was not at my best. But as long as you restrict it to on field, and it shouldn't become personal, like if I'm a Rafa fan, I shouldn't just keep criticizing Roger Federer, saying, this guy is whatever. Your personal what do I say? Your personal feelings shouldn't come in your report, or in the athlete you want to criticize. It has to be purely rational and purely based on performances on the field. And trust me, if your analysis is correct, this athlete himself or herself will know first. So you don't have to worry about that, as long as you keep it, like Meghna said, nice, simple, and two on-field performances.
So you've got to keep your. You've got to be careful about the words you use.
Yeah, careful about the
Not
words.
very-
Don't like just blurt out words that we use.
That don't make sense. Right.
Yeah. The next time you might not be even invited to a press conference. That's how it goes on.
But that does happen. If you
Yeah.
get into the wrong books of somebody, they might not like to speak to you for a while, until they hopefully forget everything and then speak to you again.
Right. Okay. Ritik Biswas has 2 questions. Can you ask your first question, Ritik?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is another Ritik in the meeting. Good morning, everyone. So, when at these times we are stuck at our home, and whatever mode of communication is done is through online, right? So, and there often happens certain things, like when the interview is giving out an information, the information tends to be distorted in a way how we are supposed to interpret it. So like a lot of information is missed out through the online communication process, because there's no physical proximity, because a physical proximity is really important in getting to actually understand the mood, the tonalities in which a certain interview is speaking, right?
Ritik, thank you. I think what you've written in the chat box is is I can read it out for a second. How do you face the challenges because there's no physical proximity? How do you deal with the interview? Is what he's asking.
I mean, for us, it's more of it is on the phone, and you're correct. If there's no physical proximity, it's difficult to kind of sense the mood. But in terms of you're speaking about misreporting or stuff that shouldn't happen, because even if it's online or it's on the phone, you tend to record stuff, you tend to write stuff, you make notes. So I mean, you just kind of quote verbatim as it is, and in terms of mood, yeah, it has to be his voice. You have to be smart enough to kind of sense the mood out of his voice or out of his just general tone. So yeah, I mean, it's not a lot different, but like you said, that physical presence does matter in some ways. But I mean, you have to make do with whatever you have right now. So phone and online is not that bad either.
Thank you, Ritvik. Viransh has another question that might be a little technical. Viransh, do you want to go ahead? Viransh Shah. Is he here?
Hello, Ritik bhai. Can you hear me?
Hi, Viransh. Yeah, go
Go
on.
ahead.
I hope you remember me, Ritik bhai.
Yes, of course.
So,
Go ahead.
so my question is that a player's performance when we are doing a copy. So while analyzing the performance, should it be fully focused on statistics based on a series of matches, or should it be also looked at the conditions like pitch conditions, the weather conditions around, and who are the opposition? So how should that approach be taken?
Yeah, I think you've kind of answered it yourself. It should not purely be based on statistics, because while statistics do provide a reflection, that is not the story. Statistics are never the story in sport, because, like you said, there are different facets. There is the opposition, there's the weather, there's the pitch conditions. In football, in tennis, there are a lot of other things, right? So that's where your technical and your analysis comes into play. Even if a player is failing throughout a series, and you think, okay, no, he was doing all right, he was just unlucky, or the conditions were not in his favor, or something like that. So it can never be purely based on stats. To answer your question, it should never be based on stats. Stats can only add value to your report. Like if you want to write a report and you want to fall back on some stats to add value and to add weightage to your report, then stats can play a role. But statistics as a standalone would rarely constitute a story, unless of course it is very obvious that the stats also back it up, that this guy is either overperforming or underperforming or whatever. So yeah, stats is purely one aspect of it.
Meghna, do you want to add to this?
I actually agree with what Ritvik is saying. Stats is one part of your story. It will just add value. Your basic story should be about the conditions as well, and how the person has practiced before playing that particular game, and those parts of that should be your basic story. Adding stats to that only becomes secondary and adds value, like Ritik said.
Thank you. I think we are there at the end of the questions. I would like to ask both of you if you want to leave the participants with probably 1 or 2 pointers of what they should do when it comes to sports reporting. What are the 2 things that they would need to focus on if you were to choose just 2 or 3 things?
Yeah.
Firstly, love the sport that you're reporting. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't like a particular sport, but you're given that
I think
So approach people who know a particular athlete or a particular tournament, find out more stuff, research as much as possible. You need to read so that your story is correct and in the right direction. Also, firstly, enjoy what you're doing. That will make that'll make you think that, okay, this is actually not work and it's fun. And the best comes out of you then probably. You know, once you start enjoying what you're doing, it's actually a fun world out there in sports, because, you know, there are controversies, yes, but when you're covering sport as just a sport and not looking at it the way news channels look at it, it is fun, enjoy it, but keep your editorial sense strong. That can't be, that should be your anthem. Keep the editorial sense strong, and be it print, online, or TV, just read, make sure your research is strong.
Ritwik?
Right. Apart from obviously enjoying the sport, like she said, have the passion for it. Firstly, keep your basics of journalism intact. That is one thing which you have to remember, that it is still journalism. It's not a different world per se. You have to have your basics of journalism strong. About in terms of either like reporting stories, writing stories, or broadcasting stories. And second would be one of the things that is important in sports journalism is writing well. So that is something where you can constantly improve. Everyone will improve as they progress, but the better you write, the more you will stand out, because sport journalism, I would say, writing is a key in the way you write your story, or you present your story, or you kind of package the story. So yeah, keep the basics strong, and keep the writing solid, and then I think you should be fine.
Thank you both. To wrap this up, I would like to thank everybody present in the audience, all the participants for asking such interesting questions. Both our speakers have highlighted on the importance of drawing a line between the sporting personality and the person behind, on the importance of grassroots reporting and building a relationship with the personalities, and most of all, developing a strong editorial sense. I'm sure we will be able to take this into the class on campus when we learn about sports reporting in detail. I have shared a link with all of you to provide your feedback. So please, we'd be grateful if you do that. I hope to see all of you in the next webinar with alumni Shalu Yadav, who's a South Asia producer at BBC News. She will be speaking about writing for an international publication and an international audience. So I'll see you then. Until then, goodbye.